In a world still chasing economic justice, one voice rises to inspire change. From the streets to the boardrooms, from ideas to real action, Cornell Cruz Jr. invites you to listen, learn and transform. Drawn from the people, the community, always present, always pushing forward. Together we build opportunity, we build trust, and we build a just economy for all. This is the Just Economy Project, where equity has a sound, and the future begins with you.
Welcome, everyone, to the Just Economy Podcast. My name is Cornell Cruz Jr. I'm the Executive Director of the Community Reinvestment Alliance of Florida. Today we got a very special guest, and I'll introduce her in a second. We are a statewide membership organization ensuring that the banks reinvest into the community per the Community Reinvestment Act of 1977, as well as provide collaborations and partnerships with the financial institutions, the nonprofit organizations, and government, as well as providing education on the Community Reinvestment Act around the state. We hold bankers roundtables. We recently had our Summit 26, just happened last week. Time flies. Grateful for everyone who showed up for Summit 26 and those who were online. Greatly appreciate it. And then we also do the nonprofit capacity building grants. We're about to announce the new grants that are going to be for the Tampa Bay, St. Petersburg area, exclusively for those organizations that are up there in that area, and we'll be announcing that late in June, so stay tuned for that. So a couple of things I wanted to go over, of what we're working on right now besides those other things I just named. We recently had the National Community Reinvestment Coalition conference in Washington, D.C., of which I'm on the board. And as you well know, one of those days we do a spend on Capitol Hill. So we went up to Capitol Hill and talked to the legislators from Florida, talked about different items. A couple of things that we covered was the Mortgage Act and organizations, institutional organizations buying up all the single-family homes and turn them into forever rentals. So Senator Elizabeth Warren has a bill that probably won't be voted on until after the summer. She has a bill concerning that event. I've been talking about it for the last 3 years. Her bill wants to limit it to 300 homes for the institutional investors. I still think that's way too high. I would love for it to be about 50, if anything. So we talked about that. We talked about cryptocurrency and how that's going to be regulated. Right now, there's no regulation on the cryptocurrency, and as you well know, for some people it's a scam. Some people think it's the actually real deal, but we are working to get some type of regulation on that. There's been a rollback on the Community Reinvestment Act, and we continue to fight that. As you may or may not know, the new Community Reinvestment Act, new rule was supposed to go into effect 1 January of this year. That was cut by this new administration, which rolled back the Community Reinvestment Act to 1995. So we continue to fight that right now. That is another thing we're working on. And maybe the last thing that we're working on, or one of the last things we're working on, is SB 1071. SB 1071 took 10 years to come into effect. It was designed by the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and it was supposed to provide the information as Home Mortgage Data Act, or HMDA, report supplies. But this was going to be for small businesses. This was going to report who, what, when, and where was getting small business loans, who was not getting small business loans. That also helps us determine what areas or folks are being redlined. That was cut significantly. Less than 12% of the banks now, with this new SB 1071 rule, less than 12% of the banks in this nation will have to report now. So that was truly disappointing. We were part of the lawsuit in order to fully implement SB 1071. That was shot down. However, that was in district court. We're going to file another amicus brief here over the summer. Hopefully, it will be rescinded and fully implemented the SB 1071, so we can actually have accountability for these financial institutions and cover all the financial institutions that are regulated in this country. Right now, 3,963 different banks are regulated in this country right now. So we need all of them in the report so we can determine redlining. So I'll continue to keep you updated on those items as we continue to work on those things. So today, I'm going to bring someone special in. She's been doing a lot with the organizations and getting the nonprofit squared away, especially around investing and funding, which I'm sure all of you need, right? Because I know I need it as an organization as well. But she's been doing a lot of work around that. And Yany's organization they do incredible webinars. I've attended quite a few of them. All of you probably know her. Yany San Luis. She is the CEO and founder of the Win Women, a certified women-owned business enterprise and minority-owned business enterprise that helps billion-dollar companies with the corporate social responsibility and create a sustainable nonprofit community ecosystems. This is going to be an interesting conversation because I've been yelling that from the rooftops over the past 2 years or so. So welcome, Yany. Thank you for coming to the program.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Cornell, for having me.
All right, good. So let's jump right into it. I love people's histories and how they got to where they are. So how'd you get here?
So I would say that for me, I always was a little kid that ran her mouth. And
know the feeling.
And it's funny, my business coach at one point said, the only thing you need to be doing is run your mouth and close deals. That's all you needed to do. And I enjoyed making relationship. I enjoyed really building relationships. There wasn't really a known need I didn't know that the profession of development or sales existed, but I knew that I was really good at building relationships. And so at some point before starting this business, I was in a frontline office, a frontline development position. I oversaw corporate relations for the United States' largest Hispanic serving institution, FIU. And I realized at one point, some of my donors used to say, "Hey, Yany, I have this money, right? I have, $250,000 or $1 million, whatever it is, and I don't have time to put together a program to impact the following areas. Can you go ahead and do this for me?" And of course, as a development officer, I was like, this is amazing. Yes, of course, I could build programs for you. And then I realized, I'm like, this is a real big gap in the sense of a lot of times in corporations, and what people don't understand is that the folks that sit in the office of a corporate social responsibility, or even that dictate some of the philanthropic funds, that's not their full-time job. And so it's almost like they relying on individuals inside of nonprofit organizations to educate them and try to make the actual business value that exists. And so for me, I saw that there was an opportunity there. So I started the Win Woman almost 10 years ago. We're about to be 10 years in next year, 2027. And I wanted to bridge the gap between nonprofits and corporations and how they were doing business together. Both nonprofits serving their missions, but also corporations making sure that they're getting the business value out of their community investments.
So, as you well know, that's something near and dear to my heart these days, because I think we lack, when I mean we, I'm talking about all of us as a nonprofit community, we lack that connection to corporations, especially the smaller organizations. The name organizations, they don't have that problem because they're usually nationwide and everybody knows them. However, the smaller organizations who could really use that help and who are boots on the ground, I'm sorry to use that term, I really despise that term, but the ones who are actually down on the ground, grassroots, doing that work, deserve that recognition as
Sure.
well, and should know the corporations. I'm a big proponent of a lot of it is our fault because because they just don't know us. But how do we get out there? I'm really glad that you're in this space. Really, really, truly glad you're in this space, because we need to understand how to get out there and how to talk to them. We can't just blow in with the usual stuff that when we're talking to the community about what we do. There has to be more nuance to it, I would take it, right?
100%. I think what's happening right now is how you are actually data storytelling, how you are actually sharing the impact you're having. And here's the thing, the storytelling of nonprofits has actually really adjusted over the last 10 years, and more importantly, after COVID. And what I mean by that is that corporations no longer want to see what I call sad stories. They don't want to see, whereas if you think about the Sarah McLachlan commercials with the ASPCA and the sad dogs in the
Every
cages,
December,
right? You see it and you feel for it. It's a very compelling case, but people don't want to feel bad about their philanthropy. People want to feel inspired. People want to feel that whatever they are solving for, there's a future state. Not, and what is that road to it? And so when you're storytelling, let's storytell a future state of, because you invest in us, this is what's going to happen, right? What's the outcome of what's happening when you're investing in us, versus going from a position of, this is, the playing field isn't leveled, which I can completely agree for a number of organizations, then the folks that you're serving, it's not leveled. I want you to be more proactive in understanding how you are storytelling the outcomes, right? The actual outcomes of what is going to happen when you invest in us.
I hope you're listening. I hope you're listening. I hope you are listening. She said something very, very important just now. We have to make them, instead of the sad stories, we got to get them to be inspired.
Yes.
And I think we've been looking at it wrong. We've been looking at, now that you say that, it just hit me. Now that you say that, okay, so wait a minute. We've been talking about, okay, this story was so sad. This person went through this, they went through that. Because of our services, we were able to help them. Instead of taking a totally different tone, I'm really glad you said that. I don't want you to give away all your trade secrets, but I need you to elaborate a little bit.
Absolutely. What's happening is, for example, we have organizations, and I see about like the small business side, because on the corporate end, our business serves corporations with corporate social responsibility, even their supply chains, getting minority-owned businesses into supply chain and everything else. And it's interesting because a lot of times people would lead with, well, I'm a minority-owned business. I'm a women-owned business. Those are both things that are true for my business, but you don't need to lead with that. Lead with your results, right? Don't talk to me about the story of all the grief and all the things that happened beforehand. How about you showcase to me the success and then say, oh, by the way, and look at the story. Right? It's a combination of people want to invest in something that's inspiring, not in it seems like you're so lucky to be there, right? You don't want to come off as condescending in any way, but it's a matter of corporations and even individuals these days are not wanting the sob story. They want to understand the inspiration behind what their philanthropic investment is going to look like. If investing in this for the longevity, for the sustainability of the organization. They also don't want for you to be asking them out of desperation, right? I've seen a lot of nonprofits, and I understand the climate right now is really heated as it relates to funding. You just can't come from a place of desperation. It doesn't look good, right? And it's also one of those things of like, if you don't make this investment in us today, our doors are going to close. Well, I wouldn't want to make an investment if your doors are going to close, because that to me says that the business is not sustainable or the organization is not sustainable. That's not a compelling reason for someone to give. And so these are the things that we want to make sure that we're getting our story straight, but more importantly, that we're proving the impact in the sense of these are the expected outcomes that when you're investing in us, and those are the business lingo that we want to get right, is the expected outcomes of when you invest in us, you should be receiving.
I mean, that's so profound because it's really hitting me because I'm listening to the nonprofits and their stories and it does sound I guess when somebody's got to tell you something for it to hit you in between the eyes, because it just hit me. We do come from a point of desperation, and we got to get out of that mode, especially these days where funding is cut. And I remember when it first happened, we were having meeting after meeting after meeting, and everybody sounded. Now that you say that, and no disrespect whatsoever, no diss, but we sounded desperate at the same time. Right. As we were just in each other. As I remember back on those meetings, we sounded kind of desperate. We want to sound viable.
Correct.
We want to sound like that we're actually helping the community. We want to express the community need. Here's how we're doing it.
Correct.
And one other thing that bothers me is, how are we changing the community long term? I advise every organization, every nonprofit to do this at some time. Actually sit on a review committee that reviews grants. Some way, shape, or form. There's always volunteer opportunities, either with government or with one of the foundations or whatever. They're always looking for folks to review those applications. Sit down just one time, review those applications. And one of the things that hits me, and I ask this question when we do the in-person interviews all the time. Okay, so what do you do? How do you know that you changed some person's life 5 years from now? Did they, or did it just last for the life of the grant? I want to know if you're going to, and I know it's difficult to track. I get it, but we have technology these days that can help you with that. We can make an app. We can do it by WhatsApp, whatever. But how did the change that you invoked on that person's life, did it stick with them, or was it only for the life of the grant?
Right.
What happened a couple of years after? Are they still implementing your same ideas later? And you need, and here's why I think you need to know that. One, to give corporations that report, you know what I mean, and individuals that report. Two, it lets you know what you may need to change as far as your program is concerned. Because, okay, you're making an impact just that first year or second year, but are you impacting lives, which is what we want to do, right?
That's exactly right. I will tell you a simple little formula that I share with nonprofits all the time. So it's about how you track what is impact ROI, right? Return on investment. So what is impact ROI? A lot of folks really report out in their annual report or in their impact reports what is called outputs, what was done. That is not ROI. So outputs is what was done. Then you go into the second phase, which is outcomes. What changed, right? The final piece is ROI, which is what was transformed. So you have outputs. Let's say, okay, 300 backpacks distributed, in this town, let's say in Little Haiti, to these students. Okay, what changed with those backpacks that are being distributed? So those are the essentially the outcomes. The ROI would be, for every dollar invested in Little Haiti, we are able to transform a child's life from, let's say, in a life of violence or what have you, whatever high level, community support area that you're trying to change. That is where you start thinking about ROI, right? That's when an actual organization can say, okay, all right, so every dollar that's invested in is going to this particular, solving for this issue. You mentioned, for example, here in Miami, we have a number of different things that you can plug into, right? And what I mean by that is we need to solve for housing. We need to solve for education. We need to solve for transit, right? These are all community investment type goals that the county has, that the Beacon Council has put out, that corporations, frankly, are funding. You need to be able to align your organization's mission, values, and frankly, your grant applications, and when you're speaking to them and your proposals, to what's happening and what they're currently investing. What I love to say, I come back from the background, and I know you do too, financial services. So I was always raising money from corporations, the banks, financial services, institutions, insurance. And the biggest piece here to know is how to make sure that you're tracking back that impact and how you're making sure that you're following the money. See what they're investing. A lot of these organizations have public record, right? They're publicly traded companies. You can look at their annual report. You can see where things are being invested. You can align your mission to that, to them, so that you have a stronger case for support.
I don't want to get off this return on investment thing.
Sure.
And because everything you just talked about was so true, and I learned this report that we just did for the grant that we did with the nonprofit capacity building project. I employed someone to write it for us, but she really hit that home. She talked about. In the report, she talked about not only what we did, but how it affects the organization for the future,
Right.
which is what we want,
Exactly.
right? Because it was capacity building. So how it affects for that organization for the future. So especially, I think, and we're gonna talk about social impact investing. That's my go-to right now. But we're gonna talk about that in a second. But in connection with that, especially with individuals, I was at an event. And it was affluent folks who were in there, a couple hundred people, maybe 100 or so people at the event, 2 nonprofits, and I was one of them. And one of the one I kept hearing over and over again, return on investment. What's our return on investment? What's our return on investment? Until finally, it just irked me till I had to stand up and say, okay, well, wait a minute, I get it. But I want you to not only associate return on investment with numbers, I want you to also equate it to impact on the community. And I apologized before I started. I said, so let me break this down for you. And I don't want to offend anybody, but let's be clear. The next time that you're at the light with your Bentley and some kid doesn't come and take it from you, because he had an opportunity that was from a program that was funded, right? That gave him alternatives, that he didn't do that for the rest of his life. That's also return on investment.
Absolutely.
Impact. And I think we got to learn how to tell that story down the road, I think.
And I think that there's public knowledge to be able to do that. I think that there's ways of incarceration rates that we can take a look at. We can look at health care rates, right? And what that looks like. Folks being able to continue to put food on the table, right? Medium household wages, all these pieces that you can look at and make that community return on investment case possible, right? Because it's a matter of even saying to them, investing in this, in the sense of youth programming is keeping these kids off the street, right? This is what's happening here. This is what's transforming this community. These are the incredible outputs that are happening, right? The actual outcomes as well. And so I think that that's where it gets a little wonky, right? I mean, I'll tell you, some of the major funders recently, I won't say any names, but I had gone to a luncheon and I saw their impact report and I was like, oh, these are all just outputs. This is just, again, X amount of things distributed, X amount of events had, X amount of students served. I go, these are all beautiful numbers.
Well, what was the impact?
But what was the impact? Tell me how that book bag, tell me how that program, what happened, right? Follow the story of the student, follow the story of what people want to hear, those people, those things. I remember, and I'll tell you, getting pushback from some nonprofits a few years ago at Ignite, at Philanthropy Miami's conference. I was hosting a panel of funders, and some nonprofit mentioned, it's like, well, but it's corporations' jobs to be able to invest in their communities. And I'm like, well, some are mandated, like the banks, right? There is an actual regulation for it, and others are not. That's not, it's a feel good. And so it's still very much a transactional piece that we have to keep in mind, in the sense of what is the value you are providing for this investment. We got to keep that at the forefront. And there can be, it doesn't have to be just transactional in nature. There can be a cultivation of the relationship, a growing of that relationship, but you have to keep communicating value, right? When you partner, you have to think to yourself, even when you're partnering with corporations and when you're partnering with other organizations, what are you bringing them to the table and what am I? Right. And understand that mutual agreement.
Yany, I see why if you're not attending the Win Women events that they do, especially the Zooms that they do and talk about these different items, you need to be signing up, because this is prolific. I think we're kind of, again, when I say we, I'm talking about the nonprofit community. We're kind of all up in our feelings, right? And everybody like you said earlier, everybody looks at the dog thing that happens, every December.
Right.
It runs like every 5 minutes. I don't care what you streaming. You have to watch a regular TV or streaming. It's running, right? And it plays that music. You see the sad dog eyes.
I know.
But we're not that. It used to be that you could do that. You could play on people's heartstrings.
And I think there's a place for it.
Yeah, sure.
Storytelling, there's a place for it in some. But we're moving on. People want to see inspiration, especially these days. Let's be real. Sometimes we're thinking about escaping vacation, that sort of thing, because we don't want to be looking at the news. We don't want to be. In fact, there are more organizations now in journalism, actually just subscription-wise, reporting just good news because of how inundated and how loud the noise is about the other news media outlets, right? So people want to feel good about the stories or the things that they're investing in. They don't want to feel sad. And yes, both things can exist. You can honor the fact that there is, lifelong struggle in some of the organizations and why they exist. You can absolutely do that. I don't want to discount those pieces. But I think that there's a way that we can make sure that the storytelling hits data-wise with ROI and that hits also the heartstrings. It's a combo. We just don't have to report just the sadness.
I mean, Yany's talking sense, especially when we're talking about being inspirational. I really like that you keep going back to that. Just be inspirational. Not only just putting in the heartstrings trying to make people feel sad, but inspire them to want to be a part of our organizations, either with a check and volunteering.
Yes,
because I'm a firm believer in some of the stuff that organizations do has happened to that person. You know what I mean? And that person feels it because it happened in their family, or they lost a child, or someone in their family got cancer.
Right.
And they understand the breadth and width of those services that are needed, but that's an inspiration thing, I think, and not necessarily, you're trying to tug at my heart. And as you said earlier, we really don't want to be, as we're in a desperate position that, if you don't give me your money, then I'm going to close tomorrow.
And it's like, why is that my problem? And that's,
Exactly.
I mean, I'm just being real. Like, why is that my problem? I think that the things that we also have to think about, I love that you said volunteering, because I will say in the market right now, I know with companies and corporations like a FedEx, right? FedEx Cares has an incredible philanthropy model where a percentage, their formula is basically the combination of their employees volunteering plus the revenue of their regions. And that's what determines essentially their philanthropic giving across regions around the world, right? Which means that they want for nonprofit organizations to come to them with volunteer opportunities for their employees to engage. Can you imagine what a great opportunity it is for your own nonprofit that's easy cultivation of new donors. And I know that nonprofits sometimes, I'll just say, are very hesitant to go full blown into an individual giving strategy. But I will say that is the fastest growing market for unrestricted gifts. And what you need to do is not only don't discount the smaller level gifts, versus the major ones.
Of course not.
If you have that pipeline, you can easily pull in 6-figure, gifts a year, just in multiple individual gifts. And you cultivate those people through volunteering, through their own giving capacity. Their families can get involved. So those are the strategies that you got to think about as well.
I mean, you hit home, and here's what makes me think about that. And I love politics. I watch politics like I watch basketball. And I remember when Barack Obama was the first time he ran, one of the things he said was over 75% of his donations came from individual donors, $15 or less.
Yes.
So why are we not using that same concept when it's proven that it works in America?
Correct.
So why we should be using the same concept?
Well, but if you remember, and just to go, I remember that time being a very junior fundraiser, right? When President Obama was elected the first time around. And there was case studies to study the way that he fundraised, because it was revolutionary at that time. And it was, what was it? And I go back to it because we've talked about it this whole segment, which is inspiration, hope, change, right? Those were the messaging pieces. And so you felt that your $5 contribution that was going towards that, regardless of your politics. It was a brilliant way to storytell the actual true impact. He wasn't talking about all the problems that were happening. He was talking about what would happen if he got into office?
Hope and change.
Hope and change. And he was talking about the outcomes of what would happen if you invested in him, right? And so that's the same concept. I think it's just a matter of reimagining, the way that you're out there sharing the message.
Oh, thank you, Yanny. We're going to come right back after this break, and we're going to talk about social impact investing. I can't wait to have that conversation with Yany.